The maglev pod hummed through the crystalline tunnels of New Shanghai's elite district, its AI navigator announcing arrivals in a voice designed to sound impressed with itself. Kai Chen watched the luminescent advertisements blur past: luxury gene mods, orbital vacation packages, neural enhancement subscriptions, each one a reminder that he'd chosen to live in a world that couldn't advertise what he actually valued. His reflection in the pod's smart glass looked almost apologetic, 28 years old, wearing a jacket that had been expensive once but was now 3 seasons behind the self-adjusting fabrics everyone else would be wearing tonight. His temple port was standard issue, not the premium crystal-inlaid models his family sported. Even his skin showed the faint tan of someone who spent time under actual sunlight instead of curated vitamin D chambers. Arriving at Qin Tower, summit level, the pod announced. Bioscan confirms identity. Kai Chen, clearance level 3, level 3. Out of 10 possible clearances in his own family's building. The pod didn't need to add that detail, but algorithms loved hierarchy. The doors whispered open to reveal the private elevator bank, where his mother's assistant, a young woman with silver circuit tattoos crawling up her neck, waited with a neural tablet hovering beside her shoulder. Kai. She didn't quite smile. Your mother asked me to remind you that tonight's gathering includes several potential investors. Please reference your family as pioneers in consciousness technology rather than. She glanced at her hovering screen. People who monetize human experience. I'll try to remember. Kai stepped past her into the elevator. How's she doing, Min? Min's professional mask slipped for half a second. Nervous. Your brother's unveiling the new product line tonight. Your mother wants everything perfect. The elevator began its ascent without him touching anything. Retinal scan, biosignature, the building knowing his patterns better than he did. Through the transparent walls, New Shanghai sprawled below, a forest of light wire towers connected by skybridges. Personal drones swarming like digital bees, holographic billboards the size of city blocks advertising lives no one actually lived. His father had helped build this city. Had pioneered the consciousness transfer tech that made the rich effectively immortal, their memories and personalities backed up like cloud storage. The Qin family name was stitched into the infrastructure of human transcendence itself, and Kai had walked away from it to run a shelter in the lowers, the ground-level neighborhoods where people still died permanently and couldn't afford to upload their grandmother's memories for Sunday dinner. The elevator chimed. Summit level, where gravity felt lighter because the rich had paid to adjust it. The Qin family penthouse occupied the entire top floor, a space so vast it had its own weather system. Actual clouds, decorative, perfectly shaped, drifted beneath the transparent ceiling that showed the stars as they actually were, not the curated constellations most people paid to see. Kai's brother spotted him immediately. Marcus Chen strode across the marble floor, or whatever material had replaced marble this season, with the confidence of someone whose neural implants were updating his social optimization algorithms in real time. Little brother. Marcus's smile activated the charm subroutines everyone in their circle had installed. His suit shifted colors subtly, responding to the room's ambient light. Traffic good from, where is it you're living now? The stacks. District 12, right. Marcus's eyes flickered, probably pulling up District 12 data, measuring the distance in status rather than kilometers. Dad's been asking about you. He wants to talk about the Foundation's quarterly results. I'm sure he does, Kai. Marcus lowered his voice, which made his neural enhancement visible, a faint shimmer around his temples where the premium processors lived. Look, I know you have your project and everything, but tonight's important. Victory Solutions is announcing their partnership with our Infinity Protocol. Mom's been planning this for months. Infinity Protocol. Kai kept his voice neutral. That's the one where people can upload their consciousness and live forever in a perfect simulation, persistent consciousness transfer in an optimized environment matrix, Marcus corrected automatically. And yes, it's going to change everything. Again, through the floor-to-ceiling windows, Kai could see the city's wealth gradient, towers of light growing dimmer as they descended toward street level, where his shelter served people who'd never be able to afford the kind of immortality his family sold. Your mother specifically asked you to be on time, said a voice behind them. Kai turned to find Victoria Ashford. No, Victoria Chen now, Marcus's wife, approaching with the predatory grace of someone who'd been beautiful before her gene mods and was devastating after. She wore a dress that existed in a state somewhere between liquid and solid, responding to her movements like it was part of her nervous system. Victoria. Kai nodded. You look expensive. She finished, smiling. That's the point. Your mother wants you at the main table tonight. She's tired of explaining why her youngest son sits in the overflow area looking like he lost a fight with a discount tailor, the main table. Kai glanced past her to where the seating arrangements floated in holographic precision, names hovering over designated positions like a caste system made of light. I see Marcus's partners, your parents, the Victory Solutions Board. I don't see, exactly. Victoria's smile sharpened. We didn't include space for your little charity project friends. This is a business dinner, not a humanitarian photo opportunity, Marcus winced. Vic, come on, what? I'm being honest. Kai knows how these events work. She turned back to Kai, and her expression shifted to something almost genuine. Look, I actually respect what you do. Helping people who can't afford consciousness backup, teaching them skills, whatever. But tonight isn't about that. It's about the family showing unity. Showing strength. Can you do that for one night? Before Kai could answer, the room's ambient AI announced, primary guests arriving. Chen matriarch requests family assembly. Kai's mother materialized from the private wing like she'd been rendered into existence by the same algorithms that designed the penthouse. Dr. Mei Chen, pioneer in consciousness technology, holder of 47 patents, architect of digital immortality, and, in her rare private moments, someone who'd once told 8-year-old Kai that helping people mattered more than helping the bottom line. She'd apparently forgotten that conversation. Kai. She air-kissed near his cheek, her perfume a custom pheromone blend that cost more than his shelter's monthly budget. You're here. Good. Marcus, where's your father? Closing the victory deal parameters. He'll be out in 5 minutes. Acceptable. May's eyes, enhanced to shift color based on her mood, currently a calculated amber, scanned Kai's appearance. Your jacket is clean and in good repair, is 3 seasons old and tells everyone here that you don't value this family's image. She softened slightly. There's a refresh alcove by the east wing. Please. For me, the refresh alcove was a closet where AI tailors created instant outfits from programmable fabric. Kai had avoided them on principle, the same principle that made him wear clothes that actually existed as physical objects rather than light-based illusions, but his mother's eyes held something that might have been actual pleading. I'll freshen up. Kai conceded, thank you. She was already turning away, her attention fragmenting across multiple conversations as her neural implants managed the social complexity of the room. Marcus, I need you greeting the victory board. Victoria, your parents just arrived. Your mother's asking about the gene mod recommendations we discussed. Kai headed toward the refresh alcove, passing through clusters of guests who existed in overlapping social bubbles. Everyone here had cranial implants that organized their networking, who to talk to, what to say, how long to engage before optimizing for the next connection. The air hummed with subvocal communication, private messages being exchanged through haptic feedback and neural interface. He was halfway to the alcove when he heard the voice, Kai Chen. I was hoping you'd be here. He turned, and the floor might as well have disappeared beneath him. Dr. Arya Zhang stood 5 feet away, wearing a simple black dress that made everyone else's technical sophistication look like desperate compensation. Her hair fell straight to her shoulders, no gravity adjustment, no programmed movement, just actual hair that actual physics affected. She had no visible neural enhancements, no status indicators, nothing but dark eyes that had always seen through every defense he'd ever tried to build. Arya. His mouth had apparently disconnected from his brain's better judgment. What are you doing here? Your mother invited me. She moved closer, and Kai caught the scent of real jasmine, not synthesized, not optimized, just a flower that had grown in actual soil. Apparently the Chen Foundation wants to discuss a potential partnership with the Groundside Initiative. The Groundside Initiative. The organization Arya had founded 5 years ago to provide free consciousness backup to people in the lowers. The same initiative Kai had been secretly funding through his shelter's resources, routing money in ways his family's accountants had never quite managed to trace. Partnership. Kai tried to keep his voice level. With my family's company. Ironic, isn't it? Arya's smile was dangerous and warm simultaneously. The Chens built their fortune on making immortality exclusive. Now they want to sponsor the group working to democratize it. They don't want to sponsor it. They want to control it, I know. She leaned in slightly, and Kai was suddenly aware of every person in the room who might be watching this interaction. That's why I wanted to warn you. Your mother offered us $50 million in funding. Full consciousness backup infrastructure for the lowers. Everything we've been fighting for. What's the catch? We rebrand as Chin Foundation Initiative, Groundside Division. All our data flows through your family's servers. Every person we back up becomes part of their ecosystem. She paused. And they want me to announce the partnership tonight. At your brother's product launch, the room suddenly felt smaller despite its cathedral dimensions. Kai processed the implications. His family absorbing the one organization actually helping people instead of exploiting them, neutralizing the competition while claiming humanitarian credit, using Arya's reputation to legitimize their expansion into the lowers market. You told them no, not yet. Arya's eyes held his. I wanted to talk to you first. Wanted to know if there's any part of the Chin family empire that remembers what any of this technology was supposed to be for. Before Kai could answer, Marcus appeared at his elbow with the supernatural timing of someone whose implants had alerted him to a priority conversation. Dr. Zhang. I'm so glad you could make it. Marcus extended his hand, his charm subroutines running at full power. My mother speaks very highly of your work. Groundside Initiative, right? Really inspiring stuff, thank you. Arya shook his hand without warmth. I hope my brother's been making you feel welcome. Kai's kind of the black sheep of the family, runs a little shelter project downtown, but we love him anyway. Marcus's laugh was precisely calculated for likability. Though between us, I keep telling him he should upgrade his implants. The processing lag must be killing him. I don't have processing lag, Kai said quietly. No, of course not. I just meant, Marcus's neural interface was clearly feeding him social optimization data, trying to recover from the minor faux pas. Dr. Zhang, my mother wanted me to ensure you'd be seated at the main table. We have so much to discuss about the partnership, I'm sure we do. Arya glanced at Kai. Where's Kai sitting? Marcus's smile flickered. Oh, well, we have limited space at the main table, and since Kai doesn't really, he's usually more comfortable in the overflow area, Kai finished. Near the kitchen. It's fine, it's not fine, Arya said, her voice sharp enough that Marcus's optimization algorithms probably registered a threat. If I'm being courted for a partnership, I want to sit with someone who actually understands what Groundside does. Kai's been supporting our work for 3 years. If he's not at the main table, neither am I. The silence that followed was the social equivalent of a bomb detonating. Marcus's face cycled through several expressions as his implants tried to calculate the optimal response. Across the room, Kai saw his mother's head turn sharply in their direction, her own neural enhancement network undoubtedly alerting her to a developing situation. I'm sure that can be arranged, Marcus said finally, his voice strained. Let me just check with, it's already arranged, came a new voice. Kai turned to see his father, Robert Chin, approaching with the measured authority of someone who'd built an empire and knew exactly how much power he wielded at any given moment. Unlike the rest of the family, Robert's enhancements were minimal and invisible. He'd come from the generation that built this technology and didn't trust it completely. Dr. Zhang is absolutely right, Robert continued. Kai should be at the main table. He's been doing important work in the lowers, whether or not we've chosen to acknowledge it. His eyes met Kai's, and for a moment, there was something almost like pride there. Let's make the adjustments, Marcus, but Dad, the seating algorithm already optimized for. Then unoptimize it. Robert's tone ended the discussion. This is still a family dinner, not a processing cluster. We can make decisions without AI assistance. Marcus nodded, his jaw tight, and subvocalized something to his assistant. The holographic seating chart shimmered and reconfigured. Much better, Robert said. Dr. Zhang, Kai will escort you to the main table. I look forward to discussing your work. The real work, not the sanitized version my wife's been reading in the marketing briefs. He moved away, leaving Kai standing with Arya and a visibly unsettled Marcus. Your father's interesting, Arya observed. He's complicated. Kai offered his arm without thinking, then felt ridiculous. Nobody did that anymore. Physical contact was too inefficient when neural handshakes could exchange entire profiles in milliseconds. But Arya took his arm, her hand warm against his sleeve. I've missed this, she said quietly as they walked toward the main table. Formal dinners with people who hate me? No. You. Making choices that actually matter. She paused. Kai, I need to tell you something before we sit down. That sounds ominous. The partnership offer from your family. The 50 million. Arya's voice dropped. I already know about your funding. I've known for 2 years. I tracked the routing through 6 shell accounts and a cryptocurrency exchange that your family's AI should have caught but didn't because you used an old exploit your father programmed before the neural era. Kai stopped walking. Around them, guests flowed past like a river around stones. You knew. I knew you were helping. I didn't know why you were hiding it. She turned to face him fully, and her eyes were impossibly direct. Why didn't you tell me? Why let me think Groundside was surviving on grants and donations when you were keeping us alive? Because if you'd known it came from Chin money, you would have refused it, probably, she admitted. But that was my choice to make, wasn't it? My organization, my ethical standards. I was trying to help, by lying. The word landed between them like a barrier. Kai felt something in his chest tighten, the same feeling he got when he walked through his shelter and saw people who'd lost everything. Who'd been discarded by the system his family built, who trusted him to actually help instead of just performing charity for status points. I wasn't lying, he said finally. I was surviving. There's a difference, is there? But Arya's anger was softening around the edges. Kai, your family is offering me everything we need to actually change things. Real infrastructure. Citywide consciousness backup. I could save thousands of lives. But if I take their money, I become part of their system. Part of the problem. She stepped closer. Tell me what to do. I can't tell you what to do. Then tell me what you'd do. If it was your choice. Kai looked past her to the main table, where his mother was greeting the Victory Solutions board with practiced warmth. Where Marcus was already networking with potential investors, his neural implants lighting up with data exchange. Where Victoria was laughing at something someone said, her perfect face arranged in perfect social calculation. I'd find a third option, Kai said. Something that doesn't force you to choose between principles and impact. Does that option exist? I don't know yet. He met her eyes. But I've been working on something. It's not ready, and my family doesn't know about it, and if it fails, it could destroy everything I've built. But if it works, Kai Chen, master of the dramatic pause. Arya's smile was genuine now, the warmth in it making something in his chest unknot. Always were terrible at finishing your sentences when you actually cared about something. I care about a lot of things, I know. That's why you're sitting at the exile table instead of the power table. She took his hand, and Kai was startled by how natural it felt, how much he'd missed actual physical contact that wasn't mediated by haptic feedback systems. Walk me through whatever insanity you're planning. But later. After we survived dinner with your family, they resumed walking toward the main table, where name cards were still reconfiguring themselves in holographic shimmer. Kai saw his assigned seat, between his mother and Victoria's father. Richard Ashford, a venture capitalist whose neural implants were so extensive he barely qualified as biologically human anymore. Arya would be across from him, between Marcus and the Victory Solutions CEO. This should be fascinating, Arya murmured. That's one word for it. They reached the table just as the ambient AI announced. All guests assembled. Beginning main service sequence. Chen matriarch requests family acknowledgement. May stood at the head of the table, her dress catching the light from the artificial clouds above, making her look like she was descending from some digital heaven. Everyone fell silent, partly from respect, partly because their neural implants were automatically prioritizing the hierarchy of attention. Thank you all for joining us tonight, May began, her voice warm and calculated in perfect measure. This dinner celebrates not just my son Marcus's revolutionary work on the Infinity Protocol, but our entire family's commitment to advancing human consciousness beyond its biological limitations. Polite applause. Kai noted how Arya didn't join in, but before we discuss the future, May continued, her eyes scanning the table and landing on Kai with laser precision, I want to acknowledge someone who's been doing important work in his own way. My younger son, Kai, has been operating a shelter in District 12 for the past 5 years. Helping people who've been left behind by progress. The pause before left behind was surgical. Kai felt every eye at the table turn toward him. Kai chose to walk away from our family business to pursue this passion project, May said, her smile never wavering. And while we initially had concerns about his decision to abandon his consciousness technology doctorate and considerable inheritance position, we've come to respect his dedication to, what was it you called it, dear? Keeping humanity human. Laughter rippled around the table. Friendly, condescending, the kind of amusement people reserved for children who said unintentionally profound things. So tonight, May raised her glass, premium wine synthesized from grapes that had never existed, optimized for enhanced taste receptors. I want to toast my son's commitment to his values. Even if those values sometimes mean choosing the most difficult possible path, everyone raised their glasses. The toast was beautiful and devastating simultaneously, acknowledgement and dismissal wrapped in maternal affection. Kai raised his glass of water. He'd stopped drinking wine years ago, around the time he realized most of the people he helped couldn't afford the neural filters that prevented hangovers. Across the table, Arya caught his eye. Her expression was complicated, sympathy, recognition, and something that might have been admiration. Then Richard Ashford leaned toward Kai, his voice low enough that only Kai and a few nearby guests could hear. Your mother tells me you've been using family resources to fund your shelter project. That's quite resourceful. Technically embezzlement, but resourceful. Kai's hand tightened around his glass. I've been routing discretionary funds from my trust, from accounts that technically belong to the Chin Foundation, which operates under family oversight. Richard's smile was pleasant and predatory. Don't worry, I admire the hustle. But you should know that May asked me to conduct a full audit of Foundation expenditures. We'll know exactly where every credit's been going by next week. The implications settled over Kai like ice water. If they traced his funding back to Groundside, they'd know he'd been supporting the one organization positioned to compete with their expansion into the lowers market. They'd know he'd been actively working against family interests while pretending to be the harmless idealist. Something to think about, Richard said, already turning his attention to the venture capitalist on his other side. Kai looked across the table at Arya, who was listening to Marcus explain something about consciousness compression algorithms with an expression of polite attention that Kai recognized as her "I'm planning your destruction" face. His neural tablet, the basic model most citizens carried, vibrated with an encrypted message. He glanced down at the text that only he could see, shelter_secure, protocol_live. Say the word. The message was from Jean, his shelter's technical director and the only person who knew what Kai had actually been building for the past 3 years. Not just a shelter. Not just a competing consciousness backup system. Something that could theoretically break the Chen family's monopoly on digital immortality entirely, but only if it worked. And only if he was willing to destroy every bridge he had left to his family. Kai deleted the message and looked up to find his mother watching him with the intensity of someone whose neural implants had just alerted her to a pattern of suspicious behavior. Something important, she asked, her voice carrying just far enough. Just shelter business. Nothing that can't wait. Good. May smiled. Because I have an announcement that I think you'll find particularly relevant. She stood, and the ambient AI shifted the room's lighting to put her in perfect focus. This hadn't been part of the planned program. Kai could tell by the way Marcus's face registered surprise. As many of you know, May began, the Chin Foundation has been exploring ways to expand our consciousness technology to underserved populations. After careful consideration and due diligence, I'm pleased to announce our partnership with Dr. Arya Zhang's Groundside initiative. Arya's face went carefully neutral. Kai felt his stomach drop. Effective immediately, Groundside will become the Chin Foundation's primary outreach program for the lowers districts. We'll be providing full consciousness backup infrastructure, training, and resources, with Dr. Zhang leading the expanded operations as our new Director of Humanitarian Technology. the table erupted in applause. Across from him, Kai saw Arya's hands were clenched in her lap, her knuckles white. Dr. Zhang hasn't formally accepted yet, May continued, her eyes finding Arya's, but I'm confident that once she sees the scope of what we're offering, the lives we could save, the communities we could serve, she'll recognize this as an opportunity that transcends any concerns about corporate affiliation. It was masterful. A public announcement that forced Arya's hand, refuse and look like she valued ideology over actual human lives, or accept and let the Qin family absorb everything she'd built. Kai's tablet buzzed again, protocol_standing_by. He could activate it now. Could reveal what he'd been building, a decentralized consciousness backup network that didn't rely on Qin infrastructure, that couldn't be controlled or monetized or used to maintain the brutal hierarchy that kept people in the lowers dying permanently while the rich lived forever. But if he activated it before it was ready, before they'd tested it properly, he could crash the entire city's consciousness network. The Qin family's system was woven through New Shanghai's infrastructure like a nervous system. Attacking it meant attacking the stability that kept 8 million people's backed-up memories safe. Arya was looking at him now, her expression asking a question he didn't know how to answer. Marcus stood, raising his glass. To Mother's vision. And to Dr. Zhang, who I'm sure will make the right choice for everyone involved. The rest of the table followed suit. Kai watched his family, his brother's partners, the Victory Solutions board, all of them drinking to a future where every good thing got absorbed into the system, where resistance was impossible because the alternative was death. His mother caught his eye across the table, and for just a moment, her mask slipped. She looked tired. Human. Almost apologetic. Then the moment passed, and she was Dr. Mei Chen again, architect of immortality, master of the game, the woman who'd taught Kai that in this world, you either controlled the future or became part of someone else's. Kai set down his glass without drinking. The first course arrived on platforms of light, holographic and real food mixed in ways that made it impossible to tell what would actually sustain you and what was just expensive illusion. Somehow, that felt appropriate. The first course materialized on platforms of light, real food intermixed with holographic garnishes that existed purely for aesthetic consumption. Kai watched his mother's guests attempt to distinguish between what would sustain them and what was merely expensive theater. Most gave up and ate everything, trusting that nothing at a Qin family dinner could actually hurt them. Trust. The word felt heavy in his mind as he caught Arya's eye across the table. She was listening to Marcus explain consciousness compression algorithms with the focused attention of someone planning a calculated response, not genuine interest. Kai had seen that expression before, usually right before she demolished someone's argument in 3 sentences. His neural tablet buzzed against his wrist. He glanced down at the encrypted message still waiting, protocol_standing_by. One command. That's all it would take to activate what he and Jean had built over 3 years of secret development. A decentralized consciousness backup network that didn't flow through Qin infrastructure, couldn't be monetized by his family's algorithms, and would effectively break their stranglehold on digital immortality. But timing mattered. Activate too soon and the system would crash under load, potentially corrupting millions of backed-up consciousnesses. Wait too long and his mother would force Arya's hand, absorbing groundside into the Qin Empire and neutralizing the only organization positioned to offer an alternative. Kai. Victoria's voice cut through his thoughts. You're awfully quiet. Not enjoying the molecular gastronomy, he looked at his plate, where something that might have been fish or might have been a philosophical statement about fish sat in a pool of luminescent sauce. Just thinking about how much actual food this could feed in the lowers, the table went silent. It was the kind of comment that violated the unspoken rules of these gatherings. You could discuss poverty as an abstract problem to be solved, but you weren't supposed to make the wealthy uncomfortable about their consumption while actively consuming. Always the activist, Richard Ashford said with a smile that didn't reach his enhanced eyes. That's what I admire about you, Kai. Consistent principles. Even when they're inconvenient. Especially when they're inconvenient, Arya interjected, her voice carrying across the table with unexpected force. Principles that only exist when convenient aren't principles. They're preferences. Richard's smile sharpened. Dr. Zhang. I've been meaning to ask about your organization's funding model. Groundside operates entirely on donations and grants, correct? No revenue generation, no sustainability plan beyond perpetual charity. We're building infrastructure, Arya replied calmly. Infrastructure doesn't generate immediate revenue. It generates access. Access funded by whom, exactly? Richard leaned forward, his neural implants visibly processing data, probably pulling up Groundside's financial records in real time. Your largest donors are anonymous. Your operational costs exceed your disclosed funding by approximately 30%. That gap has to come from somewhere. Kai felt his pulse quicken. Richard was circling the connection to Kai's shelter, to the routed Chin Foundation funds that kept Groundside operational. If he traced it back publicly, right here at this table, our donors value privacy, Arya said. Many of them fund causes their families wouldn't approve of. Helping the poor achieve immortality isn't universally popular among people who've built their wealth on scarcity. Fascinating. Richard's eyes flicked to Kai for half a second. So you're saying some people secretly fund access to consciousness technology while publicly supporting systems that restrict it? I'm saying, Arya met his gaze steadily, that sometimes people understand the right thing to do even when it conflicts with their personal interests. Sometimes they act on that understanding. May cleared her throat, a sound that carried weight despite its softness. Dr. Zhang, I hope you're not implying that the Chin family restricts access to consciousness technology. Of course not. Arya's smile was diplomatic and dangerous. You've merely priced it at levels that 90% of the population can't afford. That's not restriction. That's market forces that fund the research and infrastructure that make the technology possible, Marcus interjected, his charmed subroutines clearly working overtime to defuse the tension. Without premium pricing, we couldn't maintain the server farms, the security protocols, the backup redundancy, the profit margins, Arya finished. Let's not pretend this is about sustainability, Marcus. Your family's consciousness division generated $40 billion in profit last quarter. That's not covering costs. That's exploitation. The word hung in the air like a blade. Kai watched his mother's face remain perfectly neutral, but her fingers tightened around her glass. Real crystal, not the programmable material everyone else used. Exploitation. May tasted the word. You help, what, 5,000 people a year with free consciousness backup. We serve 8 million globally. Our exploitation has made digital immortality possible for millions who never dreamed of escaping death. What exactly have your principles accomplished beyond making you feel morally superior? Arya didn't flinch. I help people who would otherwise die permanently because they can't afford your product. You help people who can already afford every advantage while pricing out everyone else. We're not doing the same work with different methods. We're doing opposite work. Then why? May leaned forward, her voice dropping to something almost gentle. Are you considering partnering with us? The question landed with surgical precision. Every eye at the table turned to Arya, waiting for an answer that would either validate or condemn her principles. Kai watched Arya's jaw tighten, watched her fingers curl around her fork like she was physically restraining herself. He knew that feeling, the impossible choice between purity and impact, between keeping your hands clean and actually helping people, because, Arya said finally, I'm not sure anymore if principles matter more than results. You're offering me the ability to save thousands more lives. To expand consciousness backup infrastructure across the entire lower district. To give people immortality instead of just hoping someone else eventually will. She looked directly at May. How many people should die permanently so I can feel good about not compromising? That's a mature perspective. May said, satisfaction evident in her tone. Pragmatism over ideology. That's how real change happens, is it? Kai heard himself say. Or is that just how systems absorb threats and call it progress? His mother's gaze snapped to him, her enhanced eyes shifting to a cooler blue, displeasure, but contained. You have something to contribute, Kai, just an observation. He set down his fork, aware that everyone was now watching him. You're offering Arya resources to expand her work, but only if she does it under Chin control. You're not actually supporting what she built. You're buying it. There's a difference. We're providing infrastructure she couldn't build alone, Marcus said. That's not buying. That's partnering, with complete control over data flow, user privacy, and operational decisions, Kai countered. That's not partnership. That's acquisition with better PR that saves lives, May said sharply. Better PR that gives thousands of people in the lowers access to consciousness backup. Better PR that actually helps instead of just posturing about principles from the margins. She turned to Arya. My son has the luxury of ideological purity because he has a trust fund backing his shelter. You don't have that luxury. Neither do the people who'll die without our infrastructure. The accusation stung because it was partially true. Kai did have family money. Even if he'd walked away from most of it. His shelter survived partly because he could absorb losses that would destroy someone without his resources, but his mother's argument had a fatal flaw. You're right, Kai said quietly. I do have advantages that most people don't. But I'm using those advantages to build something that doesn't depend on Shin infrastructure. Something that can't be bought or controlled or absorbed into your ecosystem. The table went still. Marcus's eyes widened slightly. Victoria looked confused. Richard Ashford's expression shifted to intense interest, the look of a predator scenting blood. What exactly are you saying? May's voice was dangerously soft. Kai's tablet buzzed again. Protocol _ready. Authorization _acquired. This was the moment. Either reveal what he'd built and force his family to respond publicly, or back down and let them absorb Arya's organization unopposed. Arya was staring at him now, her eyes asking a question he wasn't sure how to answer. I'm saying, Kai began carefully, that maybe there's a third option. One where Arya doesn't have to choose between principles and impact because someone's already building infrastructure that doesn't require compromising either. You. Richard's voice carried something like admiration. You've been building competing infrastructure. I've been exploring alternatives. With what resources? May demanded. What funding? What technical expertise? Kai, consciousness backup architecture requires server farms that cost billions, security protocols that need constant updating, redundancy systems across multiple continents. Unless, Arya interrupted, her voice suddenly electric with understanding, you're not using centralized architecture. Unless you've built something distributed. Kai met her eyes and saw the exact moment she connected the pieces. Blockchain consciousness storage, she breathed. Distributed backup across thousands of nodes instead of centralized servers. No single point of control. No family that can set prices or restrict access or monetize people's desire to not die. That's impossible, Marcus said flatly. The processing requirements alone would be distributed across the network, Arya continued, her mind clearly racing ahead. Every user contributes processing power and storage. The more people who join, the more stable the system becomes. It's not charity dependent on wealthy donors. It's cooperative infrastructure that scales with adoption. She turned to Kai, and something in her expression made his chest tighten. That's what you've been building in your shelter. All those training programs for residents. You've been teaching them to run network nodes. Creating distributed infrastructure in the one place your family never looks, among the people they've already written off. That's insane, Victoria said. You can't build a stable consciousness backup network from the lowers. The power grid alone is unreliable. The infrastructure is more reliable than you think when people have incentive to maintain it, Kai said. When it's their immortality on the line, not someone else's profit margin, people take care of the system. They have to. It's survival, and when your distributed network crashes? May's voice was ice. When someone's grandmother's memories are corrupted because some node operator in District 12 forgot to maintain their hardware? When people die permanently because your idealistic experiment failed, then it fails transparently. Kai said. People know the risks. They choose to participate anyway because it's the only option they can afford. Right now, they have no choice at all. You've priced them out of immortality entirely, so your solution is to give them unstable, unproven, dangerous immortality? Marcus looked genuinely distressed. Kai, do you understand how reckless that is? How many people you could hurt? Fewer than are being hurt by having no access at all. You don't know that, neither do you. Kai stood, his chair scraping against the floor. None of us know because we've never tried. Your family has maintained a monopoly on consciousness technology for 40 years. No competition, no alternatives, no pressure to improve access or reduce prices. You've optimized for profit, not for helping people. We've optimized for sustainability, May said coldly. For building something that lasts, that people can trust with their entire existence. You're offering them, what? Some experimental network run by amateurs with equipment they salvaged from corporate waste. I'm offering them hope. Kai's voice rose despite his attempt to stay calm. I'm offering them the possibility that consciousness backup isn't just for people born into the right families. That digital immortality doesn't have to cost more than most people earn in a lifetime. You're offering them false hope, his mother countered. Hope that'll collapse the first time your network experiences serious load. Hope that'll fail catastrophically and take thousands of backed-up consciousnesses with it. She stood as well, facing him across the elegant table. I know you think I've lost sight of what this technology is for. That I've become mercenary. But Kai, I've kept 8 million people's consciousnesses safe for decades. I've never lost a backup. Never had a catastrophic failure. That's not luck. That's infrastructure your distributed network can't possibly match. Not yet, Arya said, standing. She moved around the table toward Kai, her presence shifting the room's center of gravity. But it could. With proper development, proper testing, proper resources, she stopped beside Kai, close enough that he could smell jasmine again. You've built a prototype, haven't you? You've been testing it with shelter residents. Small-scale proof of concept, Kai nodded slowly. How many people? 300. Distributed across 67 nodes in districts 12 through 15, May's eyes widened. 300 people trusting their consciousnesses to your experimental network? Kai, do you understand the legal liability? They signed waivers. They understand the risks. Kai pulled out his tablet, fingers moving quickly to bring up the interface. And it's working. 99.7% uptime over 18 months. Zero consciousness corruption. Zero permanent data loss. He projected the data onto the table's holodisplay, network topology, user statistics, backup integrity reports. Clean, functional, undeniable. Richard Ashford leaned forward, his enhanced eyes scanning the data with predatory interest. This is impressive. Very impressive. But 300 users is nothing. Scale this to 3,000, to 30,000, the complexity increases exponentially. Network stability degrades. Backup corruption becomes statistically inevitable, unless we solve the scaling problems before expanding, Arya said. She was staring at the data with the intense focus Kai remembered from late-night conversations 5 years ago, before she'd founded Groundside, when they'd both been young and idealistic and convinced they could change how technology served humanity. Kai repeated quietly. I mean Groundside doesn't partner with Chin Industries. Arya turned to May, her voice steady and final. I mean we decline your generous offer and instead partner with Kai to develop distributed consciousness infrastructure that can actually scale. The silence that followed was absolute, then May laughed, a sharp, humorless sound. You're both insane. You're turning down 50 million in proven infrastructure to pursue some experiment that'll collapse the moment it faces real pressure. Dr. Zhang, I expected better judgment from you. This is judgment, Arya said. Judgment that says we need alternatives to systems that only serve the wealthy. Judgment that says experimental and imperfect beats inaccessible and exclusive. Judgment that'll get people killed, Marcus said. Mom's right. You're playing with people's lives, their entire existences, based on idealistic assumptions about how systems should work instead of proven models of how they actually work. Your proven model, Kai said, works beautifully for people who can afford it and doesn't work at all for everyone else. That's not success. That's just optimization for the already privileged. At least our system works. Marcus's frustration was breaking through his usually polished surface. At least people who use it don't have to worry about their consciousness degrading because someone in the lowers forgot to update their node software. They don't have to worry about it because they can't access it at all, Kai shot back. You've created perfect consciousness backup for 8 million people and left billions to die permanently. That's not an achievement. That's a moral failure at scale. Enough. Robert Chen spoke for the first time since the main course arrived, his voice carrying the authority of someone who'd built this empire before any of them were born. Kai. You've built something. I can see that. But 300 users isn't proof of concept. It's barely alpha testing, it's more than proof of concept, Arya said firmly. It's proof that distributed architecture can work for consciousness backup. Proof that we don't need Qin-scale infrastructure to provide this service. Proof that my son has been lying to this family for 3 years, May interrupted, her voice vibrating with controlled fury. Using Qin resources to build competing infrastructure. Teaching people to circumvent our systems. Actively working to undermine the company that's employed our family for generations. I haven't used Qin resources, Kai said. I've used my own money from my trust, your trust that's funded by Qin profits. His mother's composure finally cracked. Your shelter that operates in space the Qin Foundation subsidizes. Your entire life exists because of infrastructure this family built, and you repay that by trying to destroy what we've created. I'm trying to democratize what you've monopolized, you're trying to be noble at other people's expense. May's voice rose. These 300 people you've convinced to trust your prototype, have you told them they're part of an experiment? That if your network fails, they'll lose everything? That you can't guarantee their consciousness will survive? I've told them the risks, have you told them the odds? She pulled up her own tablet, fingers moving with practiced efficiency. Have you told them that every distributed network attempting consciousness backup has eventually failed? That the longest surviving experiment lasted 37 months before catastrophic data corruption? That the average consciousness survival rate on distributed networks is 64%, the numbers hit Kai like physical blows. He'd known the history, known the risks, but hearing them stated so flatly made them real in a way they hadn't been before. Have you told them? May continued relentlessly, that by participating in your experiment, they're not just risking their own consciousness but the network stability for everyone else? That in a distributed system, individual failures cascade? Mom, Marcus started. No. May held up her hand. This isn't just ideological disagreement anymore. This is my son convincing 300 people, 300 desperate people with no other options, to trust their entire existence to experimental technology. That's not noble. That's exploitation dressed up as revolutionary activism. The accusation landed harder than anything else she'd said. Exploitation. The same word Arya had used against May minutes earlier. Now turned back against Kai. They had a choice, Kai said, but his voice came out weaker than intended. I didn't force anyone, you gave desperate people an option between dying permanently and maybe surviving on your experimental network, his mother said. That's not a choice. That's coercion through scarcity. It's exactly what you accuse me of doing, except I at least have 40 years of proven stability to offer. Kai felt something in his chest constrict. He looked at Arya, hoping for support, but her expression had shifted to something complicated, not condemnation exactly, but concern. Kai, she said quietly. Is what she's saying true? About the failure rates? The historical data is accurate, he admitted. But those were different implementations. Different architectures. We've solved problems they didn't know existed. Have you solved them or do you think you've solved them? Arya's voice was gentle but insistent. Because there's a difference between theoretical solutions and systems that actually work under pressure. We've tested everything. At 300 users. What happens at 3,000? At 30,000? She stepped closer. Kai, I want to believe in this. I want alternatives to the Qin monopoly. But I can't support something that might hurt people just because I dislike the current system, so you're going to partner with them instead? Kai gestured at his family. Accept their money and their control and let them absorb everything you've built? No, Arya said firmly. I'm going to build something sustainable. Something that doesn't depend on either untested experimental networks or exploitative pricing models. She turned to May. Mrs. Chen, my answer to your partnership is no. But Kai, my answer to yours is also no. Not until you can prove your system works at scale. Not until I'm confident we won't be offering people false hope that'll eventually collapse. the rejection hit Kai harder than his mother's anger. He'd expected his family to oppose him. He hadn't expected Arya to walk away from both options. So what then? He asked. You just continue struggling on grants and donations? Help 5,000 people a year while millions die, for now, Arya said. Until either you prove your system scales or the Chen family prices consciousness back up low enough that regular people can afford it. Whichever comes first, neither will come first, Kai said bitterly. My family will never lower prices enough to actually help. And you won't give me a chance to prove the system works because you need me to prove it works first. It's a perfect catch, 22, welcome to real-world limitations, his mother said. Where noble intentions don't override practical constraints. Where being right about what should exist doesn't make it actually exist. She sat back down, the fight seeming to drain out of her. Kai, I know you think I've lost sight of why we built this technology. Maybe I have. Maybe charging market rates for immortality is exploitation. But at least the people who pay those rates survive. They trust our system with their entire existence, and we don't fail them, you just fail everyone who can't afford to pay. Yes, May said simply. We do. And I've made peace with that because the alternative, unstable systems that promise everything and deliver uncertainty, hurts people in worse ways. I'd rather fail cleanly than offer false hope. Kai looked around the table. His father looked thoughtful, evaluating. Marcus looked conflicted, his loyalty to family warring with something that might have been sympathy. Victoria appeared bored now that the drama was settling. Richard Ashford was taking notes, probably already calculating how to profit from the information he'd learned tonight, and Arya was watching him with an expression that felt like goodbye. I need air, Kai said abruptly. He stood, not waiting for permission, and walked toward the balcony that wrapped around the penthouse's exterior. Behind him, he heard his mother say something about giving him space, heard Arya murmur a response. The balcony overlooked New Shanghai from a height where the city stopped being individual buildings and became a single organism of light. Somewhere down there, 300 people were trusting their consciousnesses to infrastructure he'd built with conviction and hope and maybe inadequate testing. His tablet buzzed, protocol_awaiting_command. One word. That's all it would take to activate the full network, to expand from 300 users to open enrollment. To prove to his family and Arya that distributed consciousness backup could work at scale. Or to fail catastrophically and prove them right. That's quite a view. Arya's voice came from behind him. Kai didn't turn. Come to tell me I'm being reckless and stupid? Come to ask if you actually believe your system is ready. She moved to stand beside him at the railing, close enough that their arms almost touched. Because that's the question, isn't it? Not whether it should work theoretically, but whether it actually does. It works. At 300 users, it'll work at 3,000. At 30,000. Kai gripped the railing. I know the statistics. I know the historical failure rates. But we've solved problems those systems didn't even know existed. Better encryption. More robust redundancy protocols, AI-assisted error correction, all of which is theoretical until tested at scale, Arya finished. Kai, I'm not saying don't build this. I'm saying don't risk people's permanent existence on untested assumptions. There's a middle path, which is, keep testing. Keep expanding slowly. Build a track record that proves stability before offering it as an alternative to Qin infrastructure. She paused. Partner with Groundside. Let us help you develop it properly. Kai finally turned to look at her. In the city lights reflecting off the clouds above, Arya looked impossibly young and old simultaneously. The same woman who'd cried over wine in Brooklyn 5 years ago and a stranger who'd seen too much suffering to accept easy answers. I thought you said no to both options. I said no to premature alternatives and exploitative monopolies. I didn't say no to patient development. She smiled slightly. I know patience isn't your strength. But maybe that's why you need a partner who can think long-term while you're busy being revolutionary. Is this the speech where you tell me I'm too passionate and need to be more practical? This is the speech where I tell you I've been thinking about that $5 bottle of wine for 3 years. Arya's smile turned warmer. The one you gave me because it was perfect for that moment, not because it was expensive or impressive. You understood then that timing matters. That good things offered too soon or too late stop being good. And you're saying my network is too soon. I'm saying it might be. And might be isn't good enough when people's entire existence is at stake. She moved closer, and Kai caught Jasmine again. Still real, still growing in actual soil somewhere. Kai, work with me. We'll test your system properly. Expand carefully. Build infrastructure that actually helps instead of just makes us feel revolutionary. And when we finally prove it works, when we're ready to challenge my family's monopoly, then we challenge it with a system that won't collapse. With something people can actually trust. Arya touched his hand lightly. I know you're angry. I know you want to tear down the system now. Immediately, before anyone else dies. But burning things down without being sure what'll replace them is how revolutions eat their own. Behind them, the balcony door opened. Marcus stepped out, looking uncomfortable. Sorry to interrupt. Mom wants you back inside, Kai. He paused. Actually, I'm not sure what she is. Angry and proud simultaneously? It's confusing. She's proud? Kai couldn't keep the surprise from his voice. You built competing infrastructure without her noticing for 3 years. She's furious about it, obviously. But also kind of impressed. Marcus moved closer, his voice dropping. Look, I know I've been following the family script. Doing what's expected. But watching you tonight, watching you actually believe in something enough to risk everything. He trailed off. I'm not sure I've ever believed in anything that much. You believe in the Infinity Protocol, Kai said. You've spent 2 years developing it. I've spent 2 years building what Mom wanted me to build. There's a difference. Marcus looked out at the city. Do you remember when we were kids? Before the neural implants, before the optimization algorithms? You wanted to be a park ranger. I wanted to design roller coasters. That was a long time ago. It was before we learned that wanting things for ourselves was inefficient. Marcus's laugh was bitter. Now I design consciousness compression algorithms and you run a shelter neither of us are particularly happy and we call this success. Arya glanced between them. You're not happy developing the Infinity Protocol? It was before we learned that wanting things for ourselves was inefficient. Marcus's laugh was bitter. Now I design consciousness compression algorithms and you run a shelter neither of us are particularly happy and we call this success. Arya glanced between them. You're not happy developing the Infinity Protocol? I'm satisfied with it. There's a difference between satisfaction and happiness, too. Marcus met her eyes. The Infinity Protocol is technically impressive. It'll make the family billions. It'll cement our position as consciousness technology leaders for another generation. But it doesn't, he stopped, doesn't help anyone who can't already afford our services. Kai finished. Doesn't change who has access to immortality, right? Marcus nodded. So I spend years building something that makes rich people richer and I'm supposed to feel proud because it's innovative. You could build something else, Arya suggested. Something that actually changes access, could I? Marcus's tone was genuinely questioning. Can any of us actually do anything except what the family built us to do? What the algorithms optimize us for? What the neural implants push us toward? He tapped his temple where the processors hummed beneath skin. Sometimes I wonder if I even have my own thoughts anymore or if I'm just processing whatever generates optimal family outcomes. The confession hung in the air, raw and uncomfortable. Kai had never heard his brother express doubt about their family's path, never seen Marcus question the optimization that governed their entire lives. You could remove them, Kai said. The implants. Lots of people do, and then what? Be 3 steps behind everyone else in processing speed? Unable to access the neural networks that run half the city? Cut off from the optimization algorithms that make modern life navigable? Marcus shook his head. There's no going back once you're this integrated. You can only go deeper or stop functioning in this world. That's not true, Arya said. I function fine without neural implants. You function in the margins, Marcus said, not unkindly. You've built a life in spaces where optimization doesn't reach. But try operating in premium commerce, elite networking, high-level negotiations without neural implants, and you're basically silent. A ghost in rooms full of people having 6 conversations simultaneously through haptic feedback. Is that what you want? Kai asked. To have 6 conversations simultaneously? I don't know what I want anymore. That's the problem. Marcus looked back at the penthouse. Mom's waiting. She wants to discuss what happens next. How we contain the information about your network before it damages the family brand. Contain it. She's already planning the press release. Chen Foundation's innovative distributed research initiative. Turn your rebellion into our latest humanitarian project. Absorb it, control it, make it ours, like she tried to do with Groundside, like she does with everything, Marcus agreed. It's what she's good at. Taking threats and transforming them into extensions of family power. You built something to challenge her monopoly and she'll turn it into proof of our innovative commitment to access. He paused. Unless you fight her on it. But fighting her means losing access to the family, to resources, to everything that makes my shelter viable, Kai finished. I know. She made that clear earlier when Richard mentioned the Foundation audit. Aria's expression sharpened. What audit? They're tracing Foundation expenditures. They'll know by next week that I've been routing money to Groundside, funding competing infrastructure, basically embezzling from the family to build alternatives to family systems. That's not embezzlement, Aria said. You used your own trust funds, which technically belonged to the Foundation according to the bylaws Robert wrote. Kai's laugh was hollow. My father built good legal protections. Everything that seems like mine actually belongs to the family. Everything I've done that felt like autonomy was always just family resources temporarily in my control. So she has you trapped, Marcus said. Fight her control and lose your funding. Accept her absorption and lose your independence. There's no winning move, there's always a winning move, Aria said quietly. But it requires thinking outside the game she's set up. Both brothers looked at her. What do you mean? Kai asked. I mean your mother is assuming you care about winning in the traditional sense. About keeping your funding, maintaining family connection, preserving your shelter exactly as it is. Aria's voice was thoughtful. But what if you stopped caring about those things? What if you burned the bridges completely, and then what? Kai demanded. Run a shelter with no resources? Develop distributed consciousness networks with no funding? Watch everything I've built collapse because I was too proud to accept family money. Or, Aria said, you accept that you can't build what needs building alone. You partner with organizations like Groundside who have their own funding sources. You open source your network architecture so other groups can develop it. You stop trying to be the sole alternative to Chin Industries and instead become one node in a larger ecosystem of resistance. The idea settled over Kai like cold water, clarifying and uncomfortable simultaneously. You're saying give up ownership, I'm saying share it. Distribute not just the network but the development, the control, the credit. Make it impossible for your family to absorb because there's no single thing to absorb. Just a movement. Marcus let out a low whistle. That's actually brilliant. And Mom will hate it. She can buy out organizations, can co-opt individuals, but she can't absorb a decentralized movement without looking obviously authoritarian. She'll try anyway, Kai said. Of course she will. But it'll be messier. More public. Harder to spin as humanitarian innovation when you're clearly trying to crush grassroots alternatives. Marcus looked at his brother with something like respect. You might actually win this, or lose spectacularly and publicly, Kai countered. At least it'll be spectacular, Aria said, and her smile held dangerous warmth. At least you'll fail honestly instead of compromising quietly. Behind them, the door opened again. May stepped out, her posture perfect, her expression carefully neutral. I'm glad you're all getting along, she said. Shall we discuss terms? Kai met his mother's eyes and saw the woman who'd built an empire and the woman who'd once told him helping people mattered and the woman who'd learned to conflate those identities until they were inseparable. There are no terms, he said. I'm not negotiating, Kai, I'm open sourcing the network architecture. Tonight. Anyone who wants to build distributed consciousness backup can access the plans, the code, the lessons learned. I'm making it impossible for you to buy, to absorb, to control. His mother's face went very still. You'd give away 3 years of development? Let anyone exploit your work, I'd let anyone build on it. That's not exploitation. That's how things should work, you naive. May stopped, visibly controlling herself. You'll destroy any commercial value the network might have. No one will fund development if the architecture is freely available. You'll kill your own project. Good, Kai said. Then it'll live as a movement instead of a product. Which is what it should have been from the start. He pulled out his tablet, fingers moving to execute the command he'd been delaying all night. The one that would release everything he'd built into the world. No protections, no ownership, no control. His mother watched him with something that might have been respect or grief or fury, possibly all three. You're making a mistake, she said. Probably, Kai agreed. But at least it'll be my mistake. Not yours, he pressed confirm. The protocol released into the world like a virus, or like hope, depending on your perspective, and somewhere in the lowers, 300 people's consciousnesses rested on infrastructure that was now open for anyone to examine, to improve, to break. It terrified him. It felt like the first honest thing he'd done in years. The protocol release rippled through New Shanghai's networks like a stone dropped in still water, invisible at first, then expanding in concentric circles that would eventually touch everything. Kai watched the confirmation messages scroll across his tablet, code repositories accepting the upload, decentralized servers copying the architecture, automated systems beginning to parse and distribute his 3 years of work to anyone with the technical literacy to understand it. His mother stood motionless on the balcony, her enhanced eyes tracking data streams Kai couldn't see, probably watching the same release propagate through her family's monitoring systems, watching her son's rebellion become irreversible in real time. You'll regret this, May said finally, her voice empty of the fury Kai had expected. She sounded tired. Not today. Maybe not tomorrow. But when someone takes your work and monetizes it, when they build infrastructure that fails and people blame you for releasing untested code, when the Chin family's legal team comes after you for breach of foundation agreements, you'll regret choosing ideology over strategy. Maybe, Kai agreed. But I'll regret it honestly. His mother's laugh was bitter. Honest regret. That's what you're trading 3 years of work for. The privilege of failing transparently instead of succeeding quietly. She turned to face him fully. You could have been great. Kai. You have the mind for this work, the principles people respond to, the authenticity that makes others want to follow you. But you're so committed to being pure that you'll destroy anything you build rather than let it become complicated. Complicated is just another word for compromised. Complicated is the word for functional, May countered. For systems that actually work in the real world instead of just existing as beautiful protests against how things are. She moved closer, and Kai saw something raw in her expression, something that looked almost like grief. When did you start seeing me as the enemy? When did the woman who taught you that helping people mattered become the villain in your story? The question landed with unexpected weight. Kai remembered being 8 years old, watching his mother work late into the night on consciousness transfer algorithms, remembered her saying that every life saved justified the difficulty, that technology should serve humanity instead of just extracting profit from it. When had that woman become someone who charged more for immortality than most people earned in a lifetime? When you started pricing people out of survival, Kai said quietly. When you made consciousness backup a luxury good instead of a human right, I made it possible at all, May said. Before Chin Industries, consciousness backup was theoretical. I turned it into reality. That reality was expensive because the development was expensive, the infrastructure was expensive, the security was expensive. I charged what I needed to charge to make the system sustainable, and then you kept charging that much long after it became sustainable. You kept pricing at what the market would bear instead of what it actually cost, because the market bearing it meant we could reinvest in better systems, more secure protocols, expanded capacity. May's voice rose slightly. You think I'm hoarding wealth? Every credit the consciousness division generates goes back into improving the technology. We're not getting rich off this, we're building infrastructure that'll outlive all of us. Infrastructure that only serves people who can already afford it, infrastructure that works. his mother said sharply. That's the difference between us, Kai. I build things that function. You build protests disguised as solutions. Before Kai could respond, Arya stepped between them, her presence somehow diffusing the confrontation despite doing nothing more than existing in the space. Mrs. Chen, Arya said calmly, you've built something impressive. No one disputes that. But impressive doesn't mean optimal. It doesn't mean just. It doesn't mean it's the only way things could work, and you think Kai's distributed network is better? May's attention shifted to Arya, and Kai saw his mother reassessing, probably pulling up everything the Chen intelligence network had on Groundside's founder. Looking for leverage. You think experimental infrastructure with 18 months of testing is ready to replace 4 decades of proven stability? No, Arya said simply. I think it's ready to exist as an alternative. To give people choices instead of monopolies. To create pressure for your systems to improve or at least become more accessible, pressure. May repeated the word like it tasted wrong. You want to create instability in consciousness backup systems because you think competition will somehow make things better for everyone. I think monopolies don't innovate, Arya countered. They optimize for profit and control. Competition forces actual improvement. Competition in consciousness backup means people die when inferior systems fail. May said. This isn't software where failure means inconvenience. It's not even healthcare where failure means one person dies. Consciousness backup failure means permanent death, complete erasure of everything that person was. You can't A/B test that. The argument was sound. Kai felt it in his chest, the weight of responsibility he'd been trying not to think about too directly. 300 people were trusting their consciousnesses to his network. If it failed, when it eventually faced stress beyond what he'd tested, those people wouldn't just be disappointed customers. They'd be gone. Completely. Forever. His tablet buzzed. Network_status. 347_nodes_active. 89_new_implementations_deploying. The architecture had been public for less than 10 minutes and already people were building on it, deploying their own versions, expanding the distributed network in directions Kai hadn't anticipated. It's already spreading, he said, showing the tablet to his mother. Other groups are implementing it. Testing it. Making it better than I could alone. May glanced at the screen, her expression unreadable. So you've created a hydra. Cut off one implementation and 3 more grow back. Clever. She looked at Arya. Is this what you wanted? Uncontrolled proliferation of untested consciousness backup systems. I wanted alternatives to monopoly, Arya said. This is what that looks like. Messy and uncertain and maybe dangerous, but at least it's not controlled by one family who can set whatever prices they want. We don't set whatever prices we want, May said, her composure finally cracking completely. We set prices that sustain infrastructure, fund development, pay employees, maintain security. We're not cartoonishly evil billionaires hoarding wealth. We're trying to keep a massively complex system running, at profit margins that exceed most industries, Kai interjected, at profit margins that let us weather crises, invest in redundancy, maintain buffer capacity for unexpected load. His mother's voice was raw now, defensive in a way Kai had never heard. You think I don't want consciousness backup to be free? You think I enjoy being the gatekeeper of immortality? I hate it. I hate that every day people die permanently because they can't afford our services. I hate that we have to make those calculations, that we have to choose business sustainability over universal access. The confession hung in the air, unexpected and devastating. Then change it, Arya said softly. If you hate it, change it, to what? May demanded. To systems that fail under load? To distributed networks that sound beautiful theoretically but collapse when millions try to use them? To Kai's experiment that's had 18 months of testing with 300 users and thinks that scales linearly to billions? She laughed. Hollow and bitter. There are no good options. Only choices between different types of failure. Marcus appeared in the doorway, his face illuminated by whatever data his neural implants were feeding him. Mom, we have a situation. Kai's network release is trending globally. 7 news networks are running stories. Stock analysts are calling it potential market disruption. The board wants an emergency meeting. Of course they do, May said wearily. Tell them we'll reconvene in an hour. And get our PR team to draft a response that doesn't make us look like we're scared of open source competition. Are we scared? Marcus asked. His mother looked at Kai, and something passed between them, not agreement exactly, but recognition. They were family and enemies and stuck in systems neither had fully chosen. Terrified, May admitted. But we'll pretend confidence until it becomes real or everything collapses. That's how this works. She walked back inside, leaving Kai and Arya alone on the balcony with Marcus hovering uncertainly in the doorway. That was intense, Marcus said finally. You actually did it. You released everything. I released the architecture, Kai corrected. The actual implementation still requires technical expertise, hardware, coordination. I didn't make it easy, you made it possible, Arya said. That's different than easy but more important. She was leaning against the railing, city lights painting her face in amber and shadow. Your mother's scared. That's why she's angry. She should be scared, Kai said. Her monopoly is ending, or, Marcus interjected quietly, people will try to build distributed networks. They'll fail catastrophically, and everyone will realize Mom was right about centralized infrastructure being the only reliable option. He stepped fully onto the balcony, the door sliding shut behind him. Not trying to be defeatist. Just pointing out that making something open source doesn't automatically make it successful. Nothing about this is automatic, Kai agreed. But at least now it's possible. People can try. Organizations can experiment. Maybe some will fail, but some might succeed. Some might build things I never imagined, or they might kill people, Marcus said bluntly. Consciousness backup isn't like other software. Failure isn't recoverable, neither is being priced out of immortality entirely. Arya countered. How many people die permanently every year because they can't afford Chin services? How many consciousnesses are lost because your family treats survival as a commodity? Hundreds of thousands, Marcus said softly. I know the numbers. They're in every quarterly report, every board presentation. Addressable market currently limited by economic access factors. That's corporate speak for people too poor to survive. He looked at his brother. You think I don't know what we're doing? What I'm complicit in every time I optimize our systems for efficiency instead of access. Kai had never heard his brother talk like this, without the polished corporate overlay. Without the optimization algorithm smoothing his speech into acceptable patterns. Then help, Kai said. You have access to Chin infrastructure, development resources, technical expertise. Help make the distributed network actually work. I can't, Marcus said immediately. Then, slower, can I? That's a question only you can answer, Arya said. But answering it means deciding who you want to be. A Chen who optimizes the family business or a person who builds things that actually help. Marcus was quiet for a long moment, his enhanced eyes flickering as he processed, or maybe just as he stalled, buying time to think without algorithmic assistance. I'd lose everything, he said finally. My position, my inheritance access, probably my marriage. Victoria's family only tolerates me because I come with Chin industry connections. If I betray that, if you choose differently, Kai corrected gently. Betrayal is just the word people use when you stop serving their interests. Poetic, Marcus said. Also probably true. He laughed, surprising himself. You know what's funny? I spent the last 2 years developing the Infinity Protocol, consciousness transfer into perfect simulated environments. Ultimate immortality. No physical body to maintain, no biological constraints, just pure existence in optimized digital space. That doesn't sound funny, Arya observed. The funny part is that it's my personal nightmare, Marcus said. Being stuck in digital simulation forever, experiencing only what algorithms determine is optimal, becoming basically an AI that used to be human. He looked at Kai. You walked away from consciousness technology because you saw where it was heading. I stayed because I thought I could steer it somewhere better. But all I've done is make the cage more comfortable, so stop making cages, Kai said. Start building something that doesn't require people to be trapped. Easy to say when you've already burned your bridges, Marcus countered. Harder when you're still standing in the middle of them wondering if jumping is brave or just stupid. His tablet chimed, one of the priority alerts that interrupted everything. Marcus glanced at it, his face shifting to something complicated. Victoria's calling. Probably wondering where I am. He looked at the screen like it was a test he hadn't studied for. I should get back inside. Face the family unity performance, or, Arya suggested, you could stay out here. Let them wonder. Make a choice that isn't optimized for family harmony, Marcus smiled, genuine, without the algorithmic smoothing his implants usually applied. You're dangerous, Dr. Zhang. You make subversion sound reasonable. Subversion is reasonable when the systems are unreasonable, Arya replied. That's not radical. It's just accurate, Marcus's tablet chimed again. He looked at it, at his brother, at Arya, at the city spreading below them in patterns of light and shadow that looked almost organic if you didn't think too hard about how deliberately they'd been designed. I need to think, he said finally. About what I want versus what I've been optimized to want. About whether there's still enough of me left under the enhancements to have actual preferences. He moved toward the door, then paused. Kai, what you did tonight, releasing the network, that took courage. Reckless, possibly destructive courage, but courage. I'm not sure I have that anymore. You do, Kai said. You just have to decide if you want to use it. Marcus nodded slowly and went inside, leaving Kai and Arya alone with the city and the weight of what they'd set in motion. Your brother's struggling, Arya observed. My whole family is struggling, Kai said. They built an empire on scarcity and I just tried to make their product abundant. That's not a small disruption, no, Arya agreed. It's potentially catastrophic for them. And possibly for everyone who depends on consciousness backup working reliably. She turned to face him fully, and in the mixed light of bioluminescent clouds and digital billboards, she looked like someone from a time before technology had tried to optimize humanity into efficiency. Kai, what we're doing, what you've started, it could genuinely help millions of people. Or it could fail spectacularly and make everything worse. Are you prepared for either outcome? I don't think anyone's ever prepared for either genuine success or catastrophic failure, Kai said. You just commit and deal with consequences. That's not reassuring. I'm not trying to be reassuring. I'm trying to be honest. He moved closer, close enough to see the faint lines around her eyes that makeup could have hidden but hadn't, close enough to smell jasmine that still came from actual flowers. You asked me earlier what I'd been building. Now you know. Incomplete, possibly dangerous, definitely premature alternatives to my family's monopoly. Are you still interested in partnering? Partnering in what sense? Arya's voice carried something that wasn't quite professional interest. In the network development, Kai said. Obviously, Arya repeated, her smile suggesting the opposite. Though I notice we're standing very close for a purely technical discussion, we're on a small balcony, it's 12 feet wide. We could have more space if we wanted it. She didn't move away. So either this proximity is accidental or you're terrible at maintaining professional boundaries. Maybe both, Kai admitted. His heart was doing something inefficient, accelerating in ways neural implants would have smoothed into optimal calm. Or maybe I'm just noticing that you smell like actual jasmine instead of synthesized pheromones, and it's been a long time since I've met someone who chose natural over optimal. Is that what attracted you? Arya's voice was warm and challenging simultaneously. My refusal to optimize, that's part of it, Kai said. The other part is watching you demolish my mother's arguments while remaining completely reasonable. That was incredibly attractive, disproportionately, Kai corrected. I probably shouldn't find intellectual sparring as appealing as I do, why not? Arya stepped closer, eliminating the last careful distance between them. We're both adults. We're attracted to each other. We're about to attempt something massively complicated that'll require extensive collaboration. Why pretend the attraction doesn't exist, because complications multiply? Kai said, but he didn't move away. Professional partnership plus romantic involvement equals exponentially increased failure points, or exponentially increased reasons to succeed, Arya countered. She reached up, her fingers brushing his temple where his basic neural implant sat, so different from his family's premium processors. 3 years ago you gave me a $5 bottle of wine and reminded me why anything mattered. Tonight you release 3 years of work to the world rather than let it be controlled. You're either the most idealistic person I've ever met or the most reckless. Probably both. Definitely both, Arya agreed. Which is why I've been thinking about you for 3 years. Why I came to this dinner hoping you'd be here. Why I'm standing on your family's balcony wondering if you're going to kiss me or if I need to make this even more explicit. Kai's laugh was surprised and genuine. That's pretty explicit. I can be more explicit, Arya said, her hands moving to his collar, fingers touching the pulse point at his throat. I want to partner with you on the distributed network development. I want to build something that actually helps people instead of just extracting profit from their fear of death. And I want to see if 3 years of thinking about you translates into actual chemistry or just idealized memory. That's very efficient communication. I thought you didn't value efficiency, Arya said, but she was smiling. I'm making exceptions, Kai said, and kissed her. It wasn't gentle or particularly skilled, just honest, sudden, 3 years of wondering compressed into contact. Arya made a sound that might have been surprise or agreement, her hands moving into his hair, pulling him closer with enough force that Kai stumbled slightly, catching himself against the railing. When they broke apart, both breathing harder than optimal. So, Arya said, her voice unsteady. Chemistry confirmed, definitely confirmed, Kai agreed. His neural implant was sending alerts about elevated heart rate, increased cortisol, all the biological markers of something inefficient and necessary. Though this is still a terrible idea from a professional standpoint, terrible ideas are underrated, Arya said. She was still close enough that Kai could feel her warmth, could count the rapid pulse visible at her throat. Besides, we're already attempting something professionally insane. Might as well add personal complications. Is this how you make all your decisions? Through embracing complications, only the important ones, Arya said. Safe decisions don't change systems. They just optimize existing patterns. She stepped back slightly, and Kai felt the loss of contact like cold air. But we should probably go back inside before your family sends a search party. They're not search parties, Kai said. They're optimization protocols disguised as concern. Even worse, Arya agreed. She straightened her dress, ran fingers through her hair, small gestures of returning to professional presentation. How do you want to handle the aftermath? Your mother's probably planning countermeasures. Your brother's having an existential crisis. The media's going to want statements about the network release. I'm going to tell the truth, Kai said. That I built something I believe in and I'm offering it to the world because consciousness backup shouldn't be a luxury good. Simple, simple, Arya repeated skeptically. Your mother's going to eat you alive. She's going to try, Kai agreed. But I've got something she doesn't have anymore. What's that? Nothing to lose, Kai said. I've already released the work. Already burned the bridges. Already accepted that my family might never forgive me. That's liberating in a way she can't understand. Arya studied him, her expression complex. You're really going to do this? Fully commit to distributed alternatives even if it destroys your relationship with your family. I already did it when I released the architecture, Kai said. Everything from here is just dealing with consequences, then deal with them strategically, Arya suggested. Let Groundside handle media relations. Let me be the public face while you focus on technical development. Give your family someone else to target. I'm not hiding behind you. I'm not asking you to hide. I'm asking you to let me help in ways I'm good at while you focus on what you do best. She touched his hand briefly. Partnership means playing to strengths. Mine include handling hostile press and making principled stances sound reasonable instead of radical. And mine include what exactly? Kai asked. Building things that might fail catastrophically, building things that might actually change who has access to immortality, Arya corrected. That's worth the risk of failure. Worth partnering with someone reckless enough to try. From inside the penthouse came the sound of raised voices, his mother probably, his father's calmer tones, Marcus attempting mediation. The family dynamics Kai had walked away from and walked back into and was now maybe walking away from permanently. We should face this together, Arya said. Show united front. Make it clear that distributed alternatives are happening whether Chen Industries likes it or not. United front, Kai repeated. Is that what we're calling this? Among other things, Arya said, her smile returning with dangerous warmth. But professionally? Yes. United front against monopoly control of consciousness technology. And personally, Arya said, I'm going to need you to take me somewhere that isn't your family's penthouse so we can finish the conversation we started on this balcony. Somewhere without optimization algorithms and neural networking and people trying to absorb our work into corporate structures. I know a place, Kai said. Ground-level restaurant in District 12. Real food, no holographic garnishes, no one wearing neural enhancements that cost more than the building. Perfect, Arya said. Let's survive the next hour and then escape to somewhere actual. They walked back inside together, and Kai felt the weight of what he'd done settle more fully, not regret exactly, but awareness of consequence. He'd released architecture that could help millions or hurt thousands. He'd challenged his family's monopoly in ways that couldn't be reversed. He'd started something with Arya that was professionally complicated and personally necessary. Simple would have been safer. Optimized would have been easier. But neither would have been honest, and Kai had built his entire identity on choosing authentically even when it cost him everything. His mother looked up as they entered, her expression carefully neutral. Kai. Dr. Zhang. The board is waiting for our response to your distribution of proprietary technology. It's not proprietary anymore, Kai said. That's the point, May said coldly, is that you've potentially destabilized consciousness backup infrastructure globally and we need damage control before people start trusting their existences to systems that haven't been adequately tested, or before they realize they have alternatives to Chen pricing, Arya interjected. Let's be honest about what you're actually worried about. The room went silent. Marcus looked between them like watching a detonation in slow motion. Victoria appeared bored, scrolling through her neural interface. Robert Chen sat very still, evaluating both, May admitted finally. I'm worried about system stability and market disruption. Those aren't mutually exclusive concerns. They're the same problem from different angles. She looked at Kai with something that might have been respect or fury or exhausted love. You've started something tonight that can't be stopped. I hope you're prepared for what that means. I'm prepared to find out, Kai said, then let's find out together. His mother said. Because whether you believe it or not, I don't want distributed networks to fail. I want consciousness backup to work for everyone. We just disagree about how to make that happen. It wasn't reconciliation. But it was acknowledgement that they were fighting about methods rather than goals, and that was closer to understanding than Kai had expected to reach tonight. Together, he agreed cautiously. His mother nodded once, sharp and decisive. Then let's start by making sure your network doesn't collapse under attention before it has a chance to prove itself. Marcus, pull up the distributed architecture. Let's see what we're actually working with, and just like that. The war shifted from opposition to complicated collaboration, messier than Kai wanted, more compromised than ideal, but maybe functional in ways pure ideology never could be. Arya caught his eye across the room and smiled. They'd survive this. Build something real from the complications. That's what happened when you chose authentically, not simplicity, but honest complexity that actually worked.